Everybody talks about how to create your next viral hit, but what's often overlooked is the importance of getting these viewers to come back. So today we're going to walk through how to do this so you can start to get some of that long-term momentum that you're after. All of that and more coming right up.
Hey, welcome to the Video Creators Podcast presented by vidIQ. You know how you put a lot of time and energy into your YouTube channel for not nearly enough growth? Yep, we get it. We are here today to help you change that.
Hello creators, how are you guys doing? Welcome back to another Video Creators Podcast brought to you by vidIQ, like we like to do every Monday. Today I'm hanging out with Blake and Ingrid. What's up? How you guys doing?
Hey.
Doing fantastic.
Excited to be here.
I know. It's been a little bit. I don't think we've all recorded together since Mid-Summit. So now we're back in 2D. It's a little weird.
Yeah. It was weird seeing the rest of you, Sam. Like, I'm used to seeing your shoulders. And,
I know, right? I've got pretty great legs, huh?
I didn't say that, but okay.
I'm apparently the short one in the group, for sure. You guys are really tall.
You kept saying you were surprised how tall we were.
I'll be honest, you were taller than I expected. So there you go.
Oh, yeah.
Actually, I would agree with that.
Yeah.
I was shocked. Yeah.
It was cool though. We got to meet a couple listeners, which was pretty awesome too.
Yeah.
Yucky ham
Tony,
sandwich.
Shout out.
Yeah.
Shout out to Tony.
Definitely got to meet a handful of you guys, which was super cool. It was really fun. I mean, also in 3D, not just to see you guys, which of course is great, but to get to meet some of the audience too in real life. It's great. Yeah. Super fun. So guys, we talk a lot with creators about discoverable strategies, kind of getting people through the door in the first place. But, we like to spend a lot of time talking about getting momentum too. And there's a pretty particular analytic that we will look at, which is the returning viewer. And I think it's one of these sort of unknown metrics that really can, give a lot of light into where we're at with the channel. So maybe we can just sort of start with like, what is that? What is the returning viewer?
Well, I feel like this is your favorite analytic, Sam.
It kind of is, actually.
New and returning? Yeah. So I think you should actually explain what the actual analytic is. Let's start there before kind of diving into what that means for content strategy.
Yeah, good call. So you can look in your analytics. If you're afraid of your analytics, don't be afraid. We can walk through this together, but you can basically break down your views into new viewers and returning viewers, which is really helpful because you can kind of get a good grasp when you look at that ratio as far as, like generally, are we reaching a lot of new people and a tiny bit of returning people? Is it kind of 50-50? Is it the other way around? I think it just kind of helps give you a bit, some tracks to run on moving forward to sort of know like the state of the channel right now. So, the returning viewer basically is just, are these viewers kind of coming back to your channel to watch on another day? I like this analytics so much because I think it gives you more information than a subscriber. Generally anybody can click the subscribe button. You think of like giveaways and stuff like that, where, you're kind of just getting somebody to passively click that metric where it doesn't really mean anything. And especially algorithmically too, it doesn't really play any part in the algorithm and surfacing your content to more people and kind of growing your channel and everything, where the returning viewer definitely does if they're coming back and watching more. So for me, I don't know. I feel like, I'm curious if you guys think any differently, but for me, I feel like it just kind of gives a little bit more information and more data. It kind of means a little bit more.
Yeah, I agree. And I feel like one of the reasons I love this analytic when we got this was because we never really had a lot of good ways of knowing that key fourth viewer signal that the algorithm is always looking for. And that is whether or not people are satisfied with the content. So, and I think this is a good gauge of if I'm satisfied with the content, chances are I'm going to be coming back. So just by that alone, I think that makes this a super valuable metric because it's really also kind of gauging people who are actively watching your content versus just being a subscriber. I can be a subscriber and I've been a subscriber for years and never seen your content in years also.
Yeah. I think I've noticed leaning into this a little bit with some people I'm coaching right now too, like their views are not bad, but as we dig into it, it's like, oh, it's just your audience coming back. Let's think about some videos that can be a bit more broad. to reach those new viewers, which we aren't seeming getting right now. And actually, it's kind of like a win-win for that the creator that I'm working with, because it shows me have a really engaged community, which is awesome. But if we're wanting to grow the channel more, let's focus on the new viewers, which I think is the blue line. Let's see if we can raise that up a little bit higher too. So
yeah, it can be helpful to sort of draw a line in the sand, because like it's real. And we talk to creators who are kind of in this place a lot where it's kind of like, I don't even really know where I'm at. Like where's true north for me right now, and how do I move forward from here? It can be really difficult when so much of the content strategy is just kind of like, I just got to put out another video and kind of do what I've been doing this whole time. So, exactly like that, we've got some creators who sort of realize oh yeah, it's like 99% returning viewers. Like it's just, I'm serving the same content to the same people over and over and over. Like, let's try to go broad and try to tap into a broader audience, or, more discoverable strategies. Where I have a creator right now who they've had massive success with their shorts, and it's mainly shorts views. So, shorts are such a discoverable mechanism. It's very like, 95% new viewers and like 5% returning viewers. So now we're beginning to talk through like, okay, well, how do we start to get some momentum? Because, if you're listening and you find yourself in that place, you probably see a lot of these really kind of drastic, volatile spikes in your analytics where, maybe you get some shorts or video goes really far and then it kind of just dies the next day. It's like, well, yeah, we got a lot of people through the front door, but a lot of them just kind of went straight out the back door. So maybe for you guys, if you're finding yourself in that conversation with a creator and you're kind of looking at that, how do we start to close the back door? Like, what are maybe some of the strategies we want to start doing to really capture this first time viewer and start to kind of convert them into a returning viewer? Where do you guys normally start with that conversation?
I feel like so much of that is how can you connect with a stranger a little bit, which might sound a little weird, but I lean a lot into the primal branding conversation because that's a great, it's a great starting point. Well, why don't you take it from there? Like, what do you do with a lot of your coaching clients?
Yeah, I mean, we have to kind of, and then shorts kind of be in the conversation as well too. Like the one thing I've been trying to figure out the most these days is like, how do I create connection within a short that people want to subscribe and come back and see more of you? And Primal Branding is the best way to do that. And we had a discussion about this, I think, a while ago in one of our meetings. But Primal Branding, the way Primal Branding works is like, I need to outwork this over time so that it becomes, as one of my creators calls it, sticky, as it starts to stick for that creator. So they're drawn back to you. So how do we go through this list of elements and be intentional about creating, sacred language for your audience, or a ritual you do in every, short or video, so that they get used to expecting that from you, so that when you pop up again, you're not just another face like, oh, I remember this guy saying this last time, this creed, this phrase, or I remember him doing this, wearing this weird outfit, or doing this, like this strange thing, or like being a doctor, having that shirt on, like whatever it may be, to draw their attention, so that as they see more of your shorts, you become more and more recognizable. That's now, okay, you're no longer a passing face in the crowd. You're now becoming more clear, somebody I want to get to know more about. I'm
curious for you guys, and I don't want to sidetrack us too much, but I tend to have this primal brand, and we've talked about it a lot on the podcast, but I tend to have this primal branding conversation a lot with creators. And I think from like a high level, it sounds great. And it's like, yeah, this is awesome. Totally makes sense. And I've definitely noticed there can be some difficulty in the actual application of primal branding. I think maybe there's something overwhelming about it, or especially when there's some sort of changes to your kind of processes behind the scenes as you're planning a video. It can be a little bit intimidating to sort of start to incorporate that. So maybe kind of making that practical, like when you're having that conversation with creators, how do you sort of lead them to the water? Like, how do you start to help them begin to implement it?
Yeah, it's hard. I think like people, I know for creators that I worked with, like it's a hard conversation to have, because it's not the most glamorous topic to get into, because it takes so much longer to see the results from it. But I think I start to point out, even outside of YouTube, everyday life, where we see those elements, whether it be a brand you listen, like you love, Apple, Starbucks, whatever it may be, and pointing out what they do so you can see those things of your own. And then even finding creators that they love and then pointing those things out from those creators that they love too, is kind of the way we approach it. But I'll be honest, like this is one of the things I'm really experimenting more with right now with creators, is how do I approach this for them? And I'd love to hear Ingrid's insights too. How do I approach this with them from an aspect of like, it's going to be new for them, you don't necessarily see the results right away from it, but how do I instill a purpose behind this so they want to actively outwork it in the future so that they will eventually see the results from it?
I think that you kind of hit something on the head there, Blake, is, kind of like being intentional with things. What's the purpose? And also just recognizing that we say it all the time, YouTube's a marathon, not a sprint. And you hear this from all sorts of people, but I would just start one place, figure out one thing, and then just make that your ritual, or whether it's working in a creed, something that you deeply believe in. I think the key with anything like this is just making things authentic and just being yourself, because then it doesn't become like this big thing. Because if you make it a big thing, okay, I'm working in primal branding today, that feels big. So how do you make it more approachable? And the more bite-sized and approachable you make little things like this, rituals in your content, then it will come off very natural. And that's where connection happens, if you really think about it.
Oh, yeah, I totally agree. And it's, it's funny because I was about to jump in and share, like, really planning can help a lot, sitting down and kind of just brainstorming, writing some of these things out. I would bet there are a lot of creators listening who maybe already have some start or some sense of primal branding that they just need to sort of vocalize. Because sometimes it just sort of happens organically, I would say, for us in this podcast, and for me, like tying in Ryan Trahan to every single episode somehow.
That did not take very long. Yeah. I don't know how many minutes somebody in the audience can comment how many minutes it took Sam to work Ryan's buddy Ryan in.
And I promise I'm not like a psychopath stalker that was like planning to just want to talk about him every time. But it's sort of become this joke, and like we laugh about it. And I know the listeners, they're like, yeah, that's just your thing. It's funny. And so that's one of those moments too, where I think as a creator, sometimes you just have some of those things in your back pocket, and all it takes is maybe just writing it down and being intentional about that and recognizing like, oh yeah, like this is a connection point. How can I maybe just leverage that a little bit more and be more intentional and authentic? Like you said, Ingrid, I totally agree. Yeah. Authenticity is a really important thing there.
I feel like part of the thing too is you may not get it right the first time, and that's okay. Cutting yourself a little bit of slack. Just know that if you have a plan and you want to be intentional about something, it may take you quite a few tries until it feels authentic. I know it did for me, 100%. As kids, you did not go from crawling to running. You had to take many steps, and you had to take lots of tumbles, I'm sure. Maybe a black eye or two, or hit your head. You had a little bump on your head. Your mother was just horrified. But still, it takes reps to get anything in. So the same thing with primal branding. So cut yourself a little bit of slack and keep taking the swings at these things. Even if it doesn't feel right, when you hit it and it feels right, it's going to feel amazing. So I encourage every single person listening to do that.
Yeah, it's always an exciting moment with a creator to see when you see the comments where somebody commented your primal branding language back to you is really solidifying. Like, oh, it's landing, like it connected. Which is really satisfying.
Can I point something out?
Yeah.
I said hi to Tony in the very beginning of this episode from So Lounge. She's a member of the audience. She gave me some gardening advice at VidSummit.
There you go.
Did it help?
How is the garden? You haven't given us an update.
That's a whole nother story.
Oh boy.
That's a whole nother story for another day. But this is my point, though, is it's become part of my little primal branding stuff here, bringing that up and talking about it and leaning into that to the point where one of you, the audience, gave me that when we had a face-to-face connection, and power of connection.
Yeah. I think when it comes to primal branding, like I totally agree. I think all of this is really, really powerful. One maybe downside to primal branding is that it sort of takes a little bit of time, and it sort of takes some repetition for the community to sort of grapple on, or like for the, I guess, the stickiness, like you said, Blake, for like the stickiness to come into play. And I think there are some maybe other strategies that can be a little more sort of quick and kind of fast acting to make that first time viewer begin to sort of transition over to being a returning viewer. And, we talk about title thumbnail all the time. Like, it really is sort of the front door. Like, it's really the start, the first exposure point that somebody has with you. But I think that's even that first impression has a lot of power to make that first time viewer connect with you even more. And I think, we say, maybe this is primal branding too. We say a lot, it all comes back to target audience. But I think with that, you're able in the title and thumbnail, you're really able to choose between, just a generic title thumbnail that somebody might click on compared to something with more emotional language that's really specific to your target audience, where, you have an opportunity with that first impression where somebody may even feel like, I don't even know who this creator is yet, but I have to watch this video because it's so personal to me. And even just that first click can already begin sort of that, that journey to the returning viewer. So do you guys see any other strategies when it comes to maybe even with a title thumbnail? Like, how could you maybe start to sort of foster that relationship from that first click?
Oh, I was going to go in a different direction on that.
Oh, we'll go the direction you were going to go.
Yeah.
I was
just going to say when it comes, because you actually sparked a thought for me. When I think of returning viewers, when you have something that hits, a title and thumbnail where you actually did everything that Sam was just talking about. You connected in some way to the point where, and you obviously connected in the video too, because there are good positive viewer signals to the point where your video is being surfaced maybe to a broader audience and you're getting in, more people to your content. What exactly is it about that title and thumbnail that you did really well? And so when you think about that, how can you replicate that magic? And I'm not saying to duplicate exactly what you did, but what is the underlying structure of the visual, that story that you told, or maybe of the title? What made it so enticing for somebody to click in the first place? And then how can we kind of bottle that maybe for a second or a third time for that voice? What do you boys think?
Yeah, I think, we also like to just encourage our creators to go watch a lot of YouTube. Also, when it comes to sort of like practically, how do you bottle that and kind of make it your own and not just completely copy? I think you really do need to just be curious. Like, go watch other channels, even outside of your own niche. Like, just go watch other channels, go watch YouTube, and just be super curious. Just ask why. Why did I click this in the first place? Why am I still watching? Or why did I leave in the first 3 seconds? You can really start to sort of piece together like, oh yeah, there's some similar patterns I'm noticing here. This is why I clicked. Now what does it look like to take this idea over here and bottle it and then apply it myself?
You know what's funny is like I feel like we all know the things we don't like about videos, but we still end up doing them in our own videos. It's like,
That's so funny. It's so true.
Yeah. Why do you think that is?
Why is that?
I don't know. I think it's just we build a rhetoric around. Like, I think you just get so used to seeing the same things happen on YouTube. You think that's the way it's supposed to be, and that's the same with life. Like, I'll see things that I may not necessarily agree with, but like, oh, that's a standard. I just do that same thing. But it's like, if you're now that I'm thinking about it now from like a viewer perspective and knowing like the algorithm wants to satisfy the viewer, it's like, I should know by watching my own content. If I don't like this and someone else's content, why would I put someone else in my audience through it? So I don't know. Maybe we're not thinking too intentionally about that rather than just creating the video in itself.
Yeah, I agree. I think another maybe sort of hard truth for a creator is like, it's a skill and it's hard. And, Ingrid, you said a second, we said it's all the time, like, it's a marathon. It just takes time. And of course there's the channels that blow up really quickly and they're kind of, everybody sort of learns how to implement a skill at different rates. And I really believe, I don't believe anybody out there can't do it. I think it really just takes time and it's a skill and it's hard. You got to build the muscle.
It's scary. For a lot of people. It's daunting because that's why we lean into doing the things that maybe we know we probably shouldn't be, but like, it's safer to follow that route, which can yield some results rather than looking for the better option that will prove better results.
And I feel like one of the things too that's really important to remember, to just kind of piggyback off what you just said, is that in order to really be successful at this, you got to become a student.
Yeah.
So if you're not on YouTube and you're not doing what Sam just said and you're not watching other content, you're not paying attention to the channels, and maybe other channels that may have nothing to do with you and your niche. But what's the pattern? It all comes down to patterns. Algorithms love patterns.
Yeah.
So what is the underlying pattern between even big channels, or even maybe channels that are within your niche that have like 100K subscribers, or even the 50,000 subscriber if they have some momentum and traction? What's the pattern between what's going on? I never forget, several months back, the channel Dodford was really rising.
Yeah.
I think, we all kind of found out about him. He had like 2,000 subscribers, but he had this one video that was really going far. And I think he has like 170 or 180,000 now. In just a few months. That's a lot of growth, and it happened really quick. And he has had some videos that went really, really far. He leaned into his voice and figured out the pattern for the title and thumbnail for him, and then just kind of stuck with that. Now, it'll be curious to see where it goes long term, but what's the pattern that you see? I encourage you to go and just check it out.
I think it's fun too, because like I can look at those channels. Well, those channels for themselves, they may not even realize the pattern they're falling into. So I can look at channels that are doing really, because we mentioned all the time, like there are a lot of accidental gold play buttons out there. And we've worked with them too, where they just don't know what they're doing right. So if you're studying other people, you can be that person to figure out, oh, that's why it's working on your channel. And that's what Jimmy did with Mr. Beast. That's how he pretty much developed what worked for him, right? Was studying other people. So if you can spot those patterns in other areas across channels, that's when you start building up a solid strategy of what can be replicatable. Yeah,
there's one part that you didn't mention, studying other people, but then experimenting.
Yeah, that as well too, yeah.
Definitely.
And being okay with the long game on experimenting.
Yeah, that's
that it's not going to happen right away. You guys talk about this all the time with clients.
Oh, yeah.
It's hard to like, because working with creators, I mean, it's the biggest kind of pushback that I get is like, the experimentation process, because like, oh, it didn't work. I'm like, well, we didn't give enough show a chance, or what did we learn from it, right? Like, I feel like, and I get the pressure because we're in such a competitive space now where like we just want it to work right away, but the reality of it is like we just can't. Like, I'd love to give everyone the best platform to take off right away, but it's like we have to do the work in between to figure out what will work for your audience, because just because it works for one channel doesn't mean it's going to work for you, and we don't know what elements of this thumbnail are actually working or need a bit more of a chance of too, right? So it's difficult.
Yeah, I feel like all of this stuff, when we talk about quality over quantity, I think there's a real tendency for creators to just hit the gas pedal and not really consider or be a student and do a lot of these running experiments, thinking about stuff like this. And it's just like that quote. I think maybe Blake and I said this in our last episode that we shot, the whole, what is it? If you fail to plan to fail. Yeah. Quote. And it's so true. Like, I think it's really easy to not want to do that because it's hard work, and instead just hit the gas pedal and just, we just got to get more content out and just keep uploading. Yeah. Where in reality, it's, back off a little bit and then maybe experiment, study some of this stuff, try different things. That could really launch you in a much better direction for sure.
Yeah. And but I don't know too, like, it's funny because we think that's more work, but it's by planning beforehand, where like, I feel like it takes more work initially, but like afterwards it helps you so much more. Whereas if you're just going into it and playing the gas pedal, trying to piece together a video you had no plans for is that much more stressful, and it's going to take that much more work to get the channel to a place where you want it to be, as opposed to doing the quote unquote hard work first and then following a little more easy process that you can dissect a lot better.
Yeah. Well, it's always, it always feels like it's going to be a lot harder when you're shifting a habit or a structure or a system that you already have been following for a while. Yeah. There's actually a creator I'm working with right now on a bit of a longer term basis. And, we've kind of took a moment to sort of hit pause. And it was one of those things that was like, hey, I'm here to support you. And I think we need to sort of revamp some of our systems here, just so I can give you more feedback. Because like videos were just going out a little bit too quickly. And so we were able to sit down and sort of identify maybe the root. I don't want to say the problem, but maybe the root of one of the opportunities that they could work on, which was really just, let's just maybe hit pause and like maybe miss, in quotations, like miss an upload for this month, for this week. And let's just take that time to kind of get aligned, and we'll talk through what's coming up and we can plan a little bit. And we just had a report yesterday. We talked for a couple hours talking through just some of their numbers and how they're doing, and just crazy, like everything was up, crazy success. It was super encouraging to see. And I think a big part of that was just sort of breaking some of the pattern, like we talk about experimenting on the channel, but I think experimenting with your own internal systems can help a lot too, because you can pretty quickly find a much easier way to do things, which, you know, a lot of times it's sort of almost like an exhale of relief of like, oh, this is so much better than what I was doing before. Now I'm even like more inspired to go create, and everything benefits from that point.
Yeah, I think that's super valuable. So I want to steer us back a little bit back to the conversation.
I know we got a little bit off topic.
Because we got way off topic there, but you had said something earlier where you were, and this is, apologies, audience. I think I'm the one that steered us off topic.
It started with the garden. That's what did it.
But you had asked a question about how do you connect better in like titles and thumbnails. So I'm curious what the two of you talk to clients about, you know, when a client wants to really lean into an emotional level on that, because I feel like that when we can tap into emotions and feelings, that's where a lot of connection happens. Mm-hmm. And I know that for myself, when I am, you know, on the homepage or YouTube is surfacing things to me, those are the ones that do get me to click. But how do you make that practical for somebody listening?
I can think from a title perspective is just, you know, pitching the benefit and the reward for the viewer, or pitching towards something they want or away from something that they're worried about, but really leaning into that. So like if something's going to give you anxiety, it's like, I'm trying to think of, like, let's say the finance space, you know, somebody like people get caught up doing the how-to, the technical terms, like things to look out for. But like, what is it the viewer actually wants from that video? Well, I don't want to go bankrupt. Well, I'm worried about losing my house. I'm worried about, you know, having not enough money to buy food. It's like that language itself, even in the thumbnail or in the title, can be what touches the deeper emotion within them that triggers something. Oh, that's what I'm trying to avoid. That's what I actually want. That's what I don't want. And that's when those topics become a little bit more widespread, but also a little bit more meaningful and make you feel something. Because we think about it in news all the time. Like, you know, when news things or articles pop up, like the words they use drive urgency in people. And sometimes things can be blown out of proportion a little bit, but they're trying to make you feel something to pull you in, to make you want to learn more about it. It's the same idea.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of connection can happen when you identify a really strong pain point that somebody feels in your title or your thumbnail, like especially if you can kind of visually show that in the thumbnail. I think if you can hit on that pain point, and it really kind of just makes you feel like, oh, like that's so personal to me. That's what I feel. And then there's some sort of a solution pitched to that as well. Like that's a really quick way to make somebody feel like, yeah, like this is the right person for me, without them even having watched your video yet. There's a thumbnail I'm thinking of from Alex Hormozy, and I think the title is something like how to get ahead of 99% of people in life or something like that. Mm. And there was this great thumbnail where it was almost like a graph. And so on the left part of the graph, it was titled You, and there was like a couple dollar bills there. And then next to it, it was called Them. And then it was like stacks and stacks and stacks of money. So there was sort of this shared visual pain point that was showing like you currently are way behind them. Like you're way behind the other people. And without him even saying that in the title or using words, he just visually really showed this pain point. Yeah. And then paired it with this strong title where it worked together. And it was like, ooh, yeah, like I felt something looking at that.
Yeah, that's smart. I like that.
And I feel like too, you know, starting that way with some sort of connection in the title thumbnail, just it plays into your retention in your video as well. Yeah. Like if you can sort of quickly get into that, you know, in the opening hook and pull somebody in and just continue to lean into that, you know, you're going to get somebody, even like just from a length perspective, getting somebody longer into your video. The longer that they're watching you, just the higher probability that they will. There's more sticky points, more connecting points, more opportunities for them to connect with you and want to come back on another day.
And I think that emotion carries through the content too. If I can keep digging into that through the video, that's when I want to keep watching more and more and more. Okay, am I more cautious? Am I more excited? Am I more anxious? Am I more driven? Right? If you can keep touching upon those points and drawing it back to that, that's when that theme sticks the way through, and then I'm constantly being drawn in as the character too.
It's hard because I feel like as a YouTuber today, one of the like some of the friction I feel a lot of creators have is, oh, there's so many things that I have to do and I just don't know where to spend all my time and energy. Well, if you had to pick one, if you were just starting, I would choose getting it right on the title, the thumbnail, and the hook.
100%.
Because especially the hook, I was having a conversation with one of the vidIQ engineers today, developing something around hooks, because a hook is so important to video structure. Because you can have the best title and thumbnail, but if you can't get them past that first little tiny bit in a way that actually does what a hook is supposed to do, and you can imagine little Bo Peep with her little staff that has the big kind of circle around it, wrapping it around your neck and yanking you into the video. When I envision a good hook, that's what I think of. It just drags you right in. You have no choice but to keep watching. But that's only going to happen if you're building tension and you're continuing off the title and the thumbnail. Yeah. And that's a big mistake that a lot of people make.
Oh, yeah. I would say, too, even just as we're moving forward, even further into sort of the YouTube universe into 2024, I think we're seeing the effects of shorts on hooks. We even just a couple of years ago, we would recommend good hooks, probably, the first 20, 30 seconds. Now it's like 10 seconds. The shorter, the better.
Yeah. So, in a short 1 to 3 seconds.
Yeah. Sure. It's got to be like immediately the first frame.
Yeah.
But I think really what the effect that's having is, especially when it comes like we're talking about building the skill and putting in the time to really prepare and plan some of these things. That hook is so important. That same creator I was just talking about, looking at their numbers, we've worked on their hooks as well, and it's crazy the impact that just the first opening seconds has on the whole rest of your video. The most sort of volatile that viewer is looking for that excuse to leave is in the first 10 to 15 seconds. And then if you can get them past that, usually that's when they kind of chill and they can sit back in their chair a bit and sort of like, okay, like I'm here, I'm in. So even this particular creator, when we started, I think they were in the first opening 30 seconds, their retention was down to 20, 30%. They had 75% of people left in the first opening seconds. And now they were up in the 60s, 60 to 70% of people were still there in the first 30 seconds. Huge jump.
Yeah.
And then immediately, you could see compared to their average retention, the rest of their graph looked great. It's really just that opening seconds makes such a big difference.
Yeah, and if you can, anytime that I've worked with creators long term, really putting a lot of those graphs, stacking them row upon row in a spreadsheet so that you can kind of track that over time. Because it's hard to okay, I'm going to do this in a hook today. And then if you don't get that result, then what are you doing? It's hard to kind of track that progress unless you're seeing it visually. It's hard when you're clicking into one video and then you're leaving and then you're clicking into another video to see that graph. Seeing that visual representation and how it affects retention overall, I think can really help you as a creator to make informed decisions on just video structure in general. Because I feel like prioritizing high retention is something that is really important.
Yeah. What else would you guys say, past the hook? Again, kind of bringing us back to not necessarily talking about great sort of discoverable strategies, but we're imagining sort of this first time viewer, okay, they clicked, they're sort of feeling some emotional connection now. You are the one that's pitching this strong emotional reward for them. They're kind of starting to feel like, okay, this is pretty good. I think this is specific to me. What are some other strategies that can help just continue to sort of foster that relationship quickly with that first time viewer?
Well, as a first-time viewer, I feel like if I get into it, and I don't necessarily have to make it to the end of the video to feel this, but it's even better if I do. But if I feel like I get that payoff there towards the end and I have that feeling or a feeling of some kind, generally there's been some sort of story that's been told along the way. There's a character that wants something. There's a reason they can't have it. What's at stake if they don't get it? And then how do they actually get that thing? And then how are they changed as a result at the end? Very basic structure, or just tension and change at its most core. But at the end, if I feel something, if there's some sort of emotion, there's a payoff there. And that makes me want to watch more content or come back and take a chance on another video. Because let's be honest, that's really what it is. Taking a chance on another video, giving you, the content creator, the gift of my time, which is very precious.
True.
When you really think of it that way. Yeah. There's a lot that goes into that. It's a lot more than just storytelling. You know, were you able to hold my attention throughout? Was the video, you know, paced well? Did it have good rhythm? Was it interesting in some way for me? I don't know. What about you guys?
Yeah, I think we do spend a lot of time talking about, like, do you know your target audience? You know, who's the person you're talking to? But I think it's also just as valuable to ask, like, does your audience know you? Like, are there any connection points for them to understand and see, like, who you are as a person? We talked about primal branding, and I think that can help. But I think just generally being authentic and maybe just not editing out some of the personality and some of the moments where there's some sort of emotion experience from your perspective can go a long way. I was actually prepping. I have a consultation tomorrow with a creator who's a music producer. I can't wait to talk to him because we're going to chat about music. But he did a really cool story video where he recorded a full song in his pool underwater. Really, really interesting video. He basically put his guitar. Have you ever seen those like scary movies where they have the box, the clear box? Ingrid just says no immediately.
No.
It's like the see-through box, and there's some sort of like crazy alien or something in there, and there's the little glove holes you can stick your hands in, and it's sort of like the latex gloves. So he basically built something like that, but he could play his guitar underwater and had like drums and stuff. It was really interesting.
That's crazy.
Super crazy, super unique idea. But basically
intriguing.
But basically what happened was some of the bags leaked, and so it basically ruined his guitar. Like, it ruined his instruments.
Was it an electric guitar or acoustic?
It was an electric guitar. Yeah.
Did he like shock himself in the water?
I forget how he did it exactly to avoid the electricity. Like, somehow everything was plugged in out of the pool, and he rigged it somehow. Super interesting. But he had a pretty emotional moment of, I was like afraid this was going to happen. You know, he could have. It was vulnerable. Yeah. He could have edited that out, and it wasn't like this long kind of. It didn't distract from the story. It wasn't sort of a sap story kind of thing, but it was just like, man, I am just so bummed about this. I didn't want this to happen. This guitar is ruined. Like a real obstacle that he experienced, and it could have easily been taken out of the video, but that moment there made me feel like, oh, this is a real person, and I'm invested in the story.
You feel the cringe too. You're like, oh, what kind of it was a nice guitar too. You're like, okay, that
exactly.
Yeah.
Stakes. There's all sorts of story elements right here, but the exact word you just tapped into is feels very real.
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
And this is where pacing and rhythm comes in, and these moments, this is where you slow things down. You got to have a little bit of that, because that's life. Life is not all at one pace. You have a little bit of, things that are fast. You have some things that are slower, especially like a moment like that, where the audience can actually feel that. And that's going to get somebody in further into a video and also connect to you so that you want to see something else or potentially come back another day.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
Yeah.
And maybe the topic of your video isn't a deep story with a lot of emotional feelings and things like that, but I think there's still good opportunities pacing wise to experiment with some of that. I think even Ingrid, the first time you talked about your garden and the caterpillars that were just destroying the flowers and everything was unrelated to what we were talking about, but you got gardening advice from somebody who felt something watching that. Yes. So I think we all felt painful. Something. Yeah. So I think this is all really good stuff as far as we're actually kind of moving sort of order of operations for this viewer. So like they clicked, they got through the hook. Ideally, there's some sort of a story or some sort of more connection points as they get through the video. Ingrid, you'd mentioned a second ago, if they're willing to spend their time to go watch another video. That being a pretty key thing. Can you unpack that a little bit more? Like, why is that important?
Well, it's important from a few perspectives. First off, the more I watch, the more opportunity I have to connect with you. And the more you've woven in little bits and pieces even of Primal Branding, I'm going to land on those and I'm going to feel something. And the more I watch, the more time I give you, that's a positive viewer signal for Alfie that day, the algorithm.
I haven't said that in a while.
I know, it's been a minute. Yeah. Alfie and Alfred.
Yes. So the algorithm is going to surface your content. It's going to find like viewers who pull your content to them. And that's a powerful thing because it's a powerful signal. Those videos that have those strong signals, those are the ones that get more and more impressions. And the more viewers that give them those powerful signals, that's how content starts to become explosive. And explosive growth can happen from that. But even just going out a little bit further, your content doesn't have to be a viral hit to be a big success too. Even just a little bit further than before, I say, hey, if I can improve 1% every single day, I'll take it.
Yeah.
This movement in the right direction. And that's where you start seeing your baseline rise a little bit as well.
It's often like I've worked with people too, and they expect, like, as we're trying to experiment with Discover videos, you're going to get that right away. It's like, hey, if we get like 1,000 outside of what we normally get, that's a big win for us. Or even like 50 to 100. Huge. Like, come on, we're pushing here. So, and it might take a bit to kind of, break those walls. Like, we have that foundation set up, we're trying to crack through. So it takes a while, but the more you do it, the more that upward trend starts to take hold a little bit. So that's where the experimentation comes in.
Yeah. Well, the nice thing is too, like, if you are sort of working on and implementing some of these call to actions and like using your end screens and sort of effectively trying to get people watching a few videos in a row, let's say you finally get the one video that goes super, super far. That one has a call to action attached to it. And now you're getting a bunch of traffic to another video you already made, which maybe points to another one. And then it totally, like Ingrid, you said, kind of raises that baseline. Now it's no longer sort of this isolated spike in time where you got a ton of views one day and then it just sort of dropped off. It really does raise the channel on kind of a whole channel level. And when we're talking about building momentum and turning that first time viewer into a returning viewer, that's sort of, I feel like, the final sort of domino at the, you get them to that point, and then that really creates a lot of that explosive growth.
Yeah, I want to clarify what I mean about baseline, just for people who aren't very familiar with that in analytics. So when you're looking at your analytics on a channel level here, not necessarily a video level, but a channel level, and let's say you're looking at 90 days. I like to use 90 days because it's a good chunk of time, even if you're doing it from a year. But, further out, it becomes a little small and hard to see. I'm not looking at the peaks, which is what a lot of people look at. I'm looking at the valleys. So I'm looking at the very bottom of your growth. And when this is really happening, when, like Blake said, if you have a video that's just getting 1,000 more views and the next one's getting 1,000 more than that one did, and so on, even if it's 500, it doesn't have to be massive growth. What you'll see is the bottom line, the very lowest on a daily basis, will just start to rise. And that is a powerful thing. So I encourage you all to sometimes go into your analytics from a zoomed out perspective. Look at 90 days, look at 6 months, look at a year. Don't always just look at 1 month, because it's hard to see things from month to month, even in day to day. But when you get that zoomed out perspective and you start to see that, you're getting returning viewers. You're getting more traction, more traffic coming to you. And that is all momentum in the right place.
Every week, we like to wrap up with a power tip. And today, I've got some pretty great news for you guys. Y'all ready?
I'm excited.
All right.
Blake's
so excited really he can't speak.
I'm on the edge of my seat. Yeah.
Yes. So there are a lot of updates happening with the YouTube shopping functionality. If you're not super familiar with that already, it's relatively new, but basically YouTube's starting to integrate with some other shopping platforms like Shopify, where you can directly link a product from your storefront in your video. And I haven't actually tried this myself yet. Maybe you guys have, but I'm pretty sure you can make the whole transaction from YouTube. So like from
Yeah,
the
I believe you
window,
can.
it just pops up. You can click on the product that they're talking about and make the transaction without leaving YouTube, which is a really, really big deal. So very cool to see that, but they're just continuing to add some more updates and just make it a better shopping experience really from YouTube. And something that they're going to start rolling out pretty soon is you can actually attach specific timestamps for when you talk about a particular product. You can have the actual little bubble pop up with that product at a particular timestamp, which is really, really cool. So, we talk a lot about content strategy and monetization strategies and kind of giving a strong call to action to make a sale. So it's really cool to see, there's going to be some more options as far as maybe you're selling a particular product, or maybe you're a YouTube affiliate and, an affiliate program with another store. You're talking about a particular product of theirs. You can attach that to a particular timestamp, give a specific call to action. Hey, by the way, this phone here is awesome. It's going to change your life. As soon as you say that, you can put the timestamp to have that product pop up, and you can really just point to a direct sale. And again, they can just make the transaction from the YouTube window and not have to leave the website. So really cool.
Love that.
To me, this is a big deal for creators who have even just hit that first threshold of the monetization or the YouTube partnership program. You have access to this stuff at 500 subs and 3K watch hours, which is pretty awesome. Not the affiliate stuff. There are some more requirements to be a YouTube affiliate, but just to start kind of leveraging some of these monetization shopping updates, it's very accessible, which is super cool. Thanks for listening to another Video Creators Podcast. We'll see you next week. Bye.